You can protect yourself against the influenza virus. With half a dozen simple mechanisms, you can reduce your level of exposure to the virus and reduce your likelihood of getting sick from it. Number one, education. You have to learn the facts about influenza, what it is, how you get it, in order to protect yourself. Number two, personal hygiene. You need to wash or sanitize your hands frequently, learn not to touch your face. Influenza is a respiratory virus. It does not get from your hands to your face by leaping off your fingers. You have to introduce it there yourself. The influenza virus is mostly spread person to person, but it can stay viable for up to 24 hours on hard surfaces where you can pick it up at work and introduce it into your respiratory system. Sanitize your hands, don't touch your face. You need to learn proper coughing and sneezing etiquette. Occupational hygiene, hard surfaces have to be kept clean. Personal protective equipment has its place as well. The OSHA certified N95 masks are most effective for blocking the spread of influenza virus, but paper surgical masks have their place as well because those are effective at blocking the microscopic water droplets which carry the influenza virus. A regular seasonal flu shot does not protect you against avian flu, but is part of every health authority's recommendation for overall pandemic planning. Ultimately, the avian flu vaccine will provide us with the most protection. The problem is, there is no avian flu vaccine. You cannot begin to produce a vaccine against a strain of virus until that virus has already emerged and has begun to spread through the human population. It will take 6 to 12 months from the time the virus is spreading before an avian flu vaccine will be available for widespread distribution. As we've just seen previously, within 3 months of the time 10 people land in an airport, the influenza virus is spread throughout the United States. There's a large window of vulnerability that has to be closed. The window of vulnerability can be closed using antiviral medications. Antiviral medications are different from vaccines. While a vaccine stimulates your own body to produce antibodies, which then in turn fight off the virus, antiviral medicines physically block the virus from being able to attach to the cells lining your respiratory system. It blocks the virus from being able to replicate. Tamiflu and Relenza are the most effective antiviral medications available. They both work against all influenza viruses, both seasonal and avian flu. Tamiflu is a capsule that you swallow, while Relenza is a powder that you have to inhale. So for practical purposes, the Tamiflu is the easier antiviral medicine to use. And the way that you use it is you take the capsule twice a day for 5 days with the onset of influenza symptoms. Tamiflu you start to take when you begin to get sick. And if you take Tamiflu properly, it will measurably reduce the duration and the severity of the illness, and it dramatically reduces the likelihood that people will die from influenza. Japan is the one country in the world that has the most experience using Tamiflu for seasonal influenza. Similar to the United States, every flu season, 10 to 15% of people in Japan develop seasonal influenza, and that adds up to 16 million people. 6 million of them in Japan receive Tamiflu. It is the elderly and the very young who are disproportionately susceptible to dying from seasonal flu, but in children in Japan who receive Tamiflu, there was a reduction in the mortality rate of 60 to 90% compared to children who do not receive Tamiflu. A reduction in mortality rate of 60 to 90%. To properly use antiviral medications, the timing is very important. Unlike with conventional antibiotics, antiviral medicines have to be taken early in the course of the illness to have the desired effect. With Tamiflu, which is a capsule that you take twice per day for 5 days with the onset of influenza symptoms, and remember, this is not subtle. You have a temperature of 104, terrible body aches, you're laid out in bed with a racking cough that hurts your chest. If it's longer than 48 hours from the onset of flu symptoms, taking the antiviral medicine will not do anything to influence the way the course of the illness will run. 2 days is already too late to get the benefits from the Tamiflu. However, if you can start the Tamiflu twice a day for 5 days within 24 to 48 hours of the onset of flu symptoms, it will measurably reduce the duration and severity of the illness. Ideally, if you can begin the Tamiflu just 6 to 12 hours after the onset of symptoms, It can be just amazing what the Tamiflu can do, but you couldn't possibly do that unless you already had the medication on hand to use before you got sick. Tamiflu is FDA approved to be used for all types of influenza for people 1 year old and over. The shelf life is excellent. It's good on the shelf for 5 years from the date of manufacture, stored at room temperature, not refrigerated, so it can go on the top shelf of the medicine cabinet, and it's very well tolerated. It is a pill, you have to swallow it. It has to be absorbed in the stomach. The one side effect seen any higher than placebo is there's a 4 to 6% increased rate of gastrointestinal side effects, but aside from that, Tamiflu does not affect human cells at all. Pandemic influenza is a legitimate threat and a serious concern, but we can minimize the impact that a pandemic would have with certain protective measures. If you're fortunate enough that your company is offering access to an antiviral distribution program, take advantage of the opportunity.